So what I'm going to share with you today is a whistle stop around a tool which is called Scamper. And I don't know if you can see the WD-40 thing that I've created there with the, but I kind of think of this as the WD-40 of creativity tools or frameworks, if you like. And that is because it will oil the wheels of any creative challenge or problem that you've got. Now, I think just listening to Julia, I think the piece about authenticity, I want to talk to a little bit as we go through. But because this is a whistle stop, I've got 10 minutes, I've set my timer. Scamper is the framework. It comes from a guy called Michael Michalko. And also it's used, the principles that are used in Scamper, you'll see are commonly used as creative ways to be creative, and you'll see that as we go through. So Scamper stands for substitute, combine, adapt, modify, put to other uses, eliminate and reverse. And I think what's really interesting is, so what I've done is I've had a look at some of the examples of things that companies have been doing since COVID and looked at whether we can see these principles at play. So this is kind of retrofitted through this lens. And I'm a bit geeky like that. I quite like doing that because then you can see, actually, if I had a blank piece of paper, can I get to that end point by using a tool? And the answer is yes, you can. I think it's really interesting. The more I've looked at the work, the COVID innovations and things that have gone on, actually adaptation, which is obviously that word that you used, Julia, I think that's the key thing. It is about being kind of chameleon-like. It is that ability to adapt. But I also think adapt is important, to your point also about not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's about adapting and potentially building or magnifying or doing something with what you've got, not necessarily saying, oh my God, where am I? It's a blank sheet of paper. So I'm going to zip through some examples for you. So the first one that I have is the principle of substitution. Now, substitution is a very common way to try and generate creative ideas. So can I substitute something for something else and find something different? So in your own organization or company or team, you might be thinking, okay, is there something I could substitute? It might be as simple as, and I think this really ties into what you're talking about with avatars, is, and what Amanda talked about before, is can I substitute my point of view as the person who wants to sell something for the point of view of somebody else? You know, it might be a different stakeholder, it might be a brand fan, it might be a brand detractor, it might be someone you find on social media who just doesn't like your brand or product and talks it down. You know, what is it that they're saying? Is there something there that you could take on that? So it's just that perspective or substitution. Now, Brewdog and actually a lot of other organizations very cleverly substituted their product for something else when the need required. And I think this is something we've seen in lots of different industries. Obviously, they've been making hand sanitizer and then donating it, but from making beer and using all their whole production line and some of their bottling, actually. It's very interesting that lots of people are finding ways to repurpose something. So I saw another example of this, which was substitution and using, because the sales of soy sauce are down, because sales of food like that are down, those little soy sauce fish bottles are being used to put one portion of hand sanitizer in. That's two companies, so substituted. Nothing new there, but the combination is different. So you'll see sometimes there are two or three things at play. So one of the P in Scamper is put to another use. And again, you'll see this, sometimes something is about substitution, combination and put into another use, but they've put all their facilities to another use for now. And lots of other companies have done this as well. You see some of the retail and the clothing companies are making masks and things like that. So C stands for combine, and I saw this one. I thought, well, yeah, is it too early? Is it too early for a drink? No, it's 12:20. But I thought this was really interesting, is that obviously bars are closed, and Bacardi have teamed up with Deliveroo and quite small businesses in different places. So London, Manchester, Bristol, some of the most popular bars there, to make their signature cocktails and then have them delivered via Deliveroo. And actually, this has all been helped by the drinks industry as well, which I think is really interesting. So they've teamed up to bring your cocktail to your door, and therefore keeping those businesses and those bars alive when they couldn't be. So the question you might ask yourself as a business is, okay, who could I partner with? What could I combine? Is there any aspect of what I already do where I can make a new combination? Or who could I partner with that might be able to help me either now or in the future? And again, I think as Julie was saying, this sort of agility, this ability to sort of flex and do something different. You might have been thinking about partnering with someone for a while, but the time just hasn't been right. And actually now it might be a time to pool your resources. Now, yeah, Nike, of course, is a huge, great big brand. And seeing this actually even down to the local PTs where I live, you know, everybody is just being so resourceful about how you can't meet face to face. You can't, you know, you're talking about your son using, you know, breeze blocks. Nike obviously have closed all their stores in their key markets. And to support the whole piece around staying in at home, the Nike Training Club app is free. Actually, this is an American initiative, but there are all sorts of different initiatives going on. And as I say, I think I'm seeing this with even, you know, my local gym, and you're probably seeing it yourselves, people where you might go to yoga or PTs, they're either offering something free or they're offering something free or small or a taster of their classes or sessions. And actually having done it, as some of you probably have, you know, it's not quite as weird doing an exercise on a Zoom call as it might be. So that's really interesting. Or pooling together. Again, I've seen people pooling together and doing different things. So I've seen a nutritionist and a PT and so on doing mixed classes. So obviously what they're looking to do is to convert the customers when the crisis ebbs. And I think this is something else, and I'm sure Amanda will talk about this in terms of sales, but what I'm noticing with all these case studies is this is quite soft. This is not hard sell. This is genuinely saying, here is something for nothing right now, and then we'll see what happens. Now, you know, we're doing this webinar for free today. Clearly, you don't have endless resources, but actually, you know, it's about being able to keep your what you're doing relevant, particularly if you're not as busy as you were. I love this example. You might have seen this. This is an example of modifying something. So Time Out rebranded as Time In and is going to for the foreseeable future. And I just thought this is a very good example of doing something that doesn't cost you any money whatsoever. It's very creative and it's modifying, again, something you've already got, a logo. You might have already also seen lots of companies, whether it's McDonald's or various other companies, are changing aspects of their logo to reflect this new world that we're living in. And I think it's quite an interesting way to think about, as Julia said, what assets do I have? What do I already have that I could play with, that I could use? And maybe actually the way that we look and feel, you know, the way that your brand or company looks and feels. Maybe that's a way to do it. So in terms of modification, you know, you can think about what could you add, what could you change, what could you even take out? Loads of fashion brands, obviously retail is, I don't know if we've got anyone from the retail industry on the call today, but obviously retail and particularly fashion are in dire straits. And I just thought this was a really nice, simple illustration of the E, which stands for elimination. And what they've eliminated here is everything that you would associate, all the norms with doing a fashion shoot. The photographer, the stylist, the makeup artist, a location scout, all of it, because it's not possible. So what they've done is sent their clothes out to models they normally work with, so people that they have already chosen, they know represent their brand, and they've styled themselves. A lot of the models, really interesting, just wearing no makeup, they've got pretty messy hair, you know, they're not looking sleek and styled and as Zara, like a shop window would. And actually it's had a very good response from Zara customers and media around the world, you know, saying it definitely is representing kind of what we look like a bit more at home as opposed to glossy advertising. So I think that's very interesting. Again, what is the norm that you would think has to happen and what can we do if we don't have it? And then the R stands for reversing something. Now, this is probably where, if you were going to try and reinvent your space you work in, reverse is a really good way to have a look at things. So thinking about what are the things that the rules that just do not get broken, that you would never break. So I don't know if you've seen DoubleTree. I mean, in the UK, Pizza Express have done this, Honest Burger have done this, loads of brands have done this, and said, you know, the thing that is we'll never tell anyone what our secret recipe is. Well, we've decided that we're going to tell people what the secret sauce is. Literally with Pizza Express, it's the secret sauce. With DoubleTree, they have these cookies that, you know, people have been speculating for years about what's in them. They've just published the recipes. And I think this also touches on something that Amanda talked about when we met before, which was, sorry, that's my timer, which was talking about providing moments of comfort or relief to people if you can. And if that's coming from a company or a brand that you relate to, then you're going to get, you know, reciprocity there. You're going to get some feelings of warmth back. So I know that's a super speedy spin around Scamper, but it's an excellent tool. I've got a worksheet which we'll make available afterwards so that you can trigger some of the questions that you might ask for yourself. But I think some of the key takeaways that I've taken, and I've reviewed about 150 different COVID innovations to prepare for this. There's also a website called Trend Watching, which is got a whole repository of these. I think there's about 5,000 on there now. So, and it's free. So take a look because it's interesting. And I think the things I've taken out of that, exactly as you said, is I think authenticity is literally, you can't do any of this stuff if it feels forced, because it will be, you'll see through it. Be useful. And I think provide those moments of happiness, but I think in terms of the sales piece is just don't force it. And if it feels like you're forcing or it doesn't feel right, then it probably isn't right. And I think, you know, there's as much a kind of trusting your instinct here, particularly with small business owners where you don't necessarily have all that data. We've got all this data swimming around, but we don't necessarily know. If it doesn't feel right, then don't force it, I think I would say. And don't hard sell was the other point. So hopefully that was helpful. As I say, that's the acronym Scamper. It's really helpful for any problem that you've got that you want to challenge and you want to work on developing, or if you want it as a blank page. So I hope you find that helpful.
Thank you, Claire. Excellent. Just one quick question. We missed, or somebody said they missed the P in Scamper.
Oh, sorry, yes. So the P, it was put to another use. So you can see, yeah, so the example, in actual fact, when you go through it, you'll see putting it to another use is in quite a few different places. But putting it to another use was that first one from the Brewdog example, where they have substituted their product for another and actually then use their production line and put it to another use. So, you know, I think you can. I'll give you another example of that just really briefly. I saw yesterday that excess capacity in our iPhones apparently is going to be used, that unused capacity in the background. There's a COVID app that is actually going to use that capacity when we're not using all of it. So that's putting something that might be wasted to another use, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So the idea then is to take Scamper and use it as a tool to look at what you currently offer in a different way and be creative about how that could best service your ideal clients, even if it's a case of tweaking rather than changing, but having that adaptability and using that to work through. Excellent. Yeah. Thank you. And you say you've got a worksheet on that as well, which we'll be sharing. Thank you. So we'll share that in the supporting email that goes out after the webinar. Thank you, Claire. That's brilliant. Excellent.